Hello, Janeites, and welcome to Austen Chat, a podcast brought to you by the Jane Austen Society of North America. I'm your host, Brecken Wood from the Georgia region of Jasna. Listeners, it's finally here! Happy December 2025, and a very happy 250th birthday to the reason we're all here, Jane Austen herself. As a special present to all of you, my guest today is none other than Susannah Harker, the woman who played the sweet and beautiful Jane Bennet in the 1995 BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Susannah Harker trained at the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. In addition to her iconic role as Jane Bennet, Susannah has appeared on television in many roles in mystery series and contemporary and period dramas, and she received a BAFTA Award nomination for her role as Mattie in the original House of Cards. Among her film roles is that of Titania in A Caribbean Dream, an adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream. On stage, she has starred in Abigail's Party, The Glass Menagerie, and many other plays. Welcome to the show, Susannah.
Hello, hello. It's so lovely to be here. Hello.
Okay, so to start, can you tell us a bit about your Austen origin story? When did you first encounter her works, and did you like her before you auditioned for Pride and Prejudice?
Well, I had a bit of a slow introduction. I was only 14 when I read Northanger Abbey at my convent boarding school, and it was presented in quite a dry way, in that way when people read going around the room, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the best introduction, I have to say, to Austen at the time. Also because I think Northanger Abbey is quite a sophisticated book. Actually, it's the heavy irony that it's delivered with really was lost to me at the time. I was a little bit too young, I think, to appreciate that. It's only in later years that I've really appreciated it for all of that. For that aspect of it and the humor and the lightness. I love it now, but at the time, it was a slow burn. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't sure. I was more attracted, I suppose, to Dickens and to Bronte and to the kind of, more kind of churning, darker Victorian books at the
Mhm.
time. So it wasn't until much later that I was reintroduced to Austen and to the genius and the sparkling wit of Austen, and then I became hooked. And that wasn't until I was offered Jane Bennet to play.
Mhm.
So
Can we, for
yeah.
1 second, talk about how you read Northanger Abbey in a convent boarding school? I mean, that had to have added somehow. Maybe it all went over your head, but was that place anything like Northanger Abbey?
Very much like that. Yes, very much.
That's
Sort of
awesome.
gothic and dark, but also and a lot of wood and a lot of kind of
Uh-huh.
but it was more Victorian actually than
Okay.
Georgian in style. But yes, I know what you mean. And looking
Yeah.
back, I definitely think that I brought that experience in a way, the convent experience, into
Hmm.
Jane Bennet, for instance, and
Oh.
into that it gave it another, you know, that sort of sense of being in an all-female, archaic environment,
Uh-huh.
in my formative years. I think most definitely contributed to being able to get inside characters, period characters. Yes.
Hmm. That is awesome. I mean, yeah, I know you said that it didn't really sink in at the time, but what a great story about like, oh yeah, I read Northanger Abbey at a Catholic boarding school in a convent. I mean, Catherine Morland would be delighted.
Yes. Yes.
So okay, in addition to that really fun fact, I just barely learned this and was blown away by it. I did not know that your mother also played the part of Jane Bennet. Like,
Yes, yes, my mum, who
delightful.
is upstairs actually as we speak. I'm
Aw.
visiting my mother here in West Sussex.
Tell her we all
Um,
say hi.
I will tell her that. I'm trying to persuade her actually to come and do an interview with me, a Zoom interview, about us both playing
Yes.
Jane Bennet, which I think would be good. Um, yes,
So how
that's
did that conversation go? I mean, so for people who don't know, she played it Polly Adams, right? Your mother,
yeah.
in the 1967 BBC television adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. So how did that go when you got to tell her?
Well, she was thrilled, she was absolutely thrilled and supportive and has an absolute connection with Austen and as my whole family had, my grandmother also was a huge fan of Austen and used to read Pride and Prejudice every year. And whenever she was feeling a bit gloomy, she'd reach for that. So one of my earliest memories is my grandmother walking across this very room, actually, clutching a copy of Pride and Prejudice and taking it to her bedroom, because she wanted to be lifted again and again and again, and that was her go-to novel. So my mother, yes, played Jane Bennet in the 1960s, which was a strange production by all accounts. I haven't seen it. I've only
I'm
seen,
not familiar with it. Yeah.
most people aren't, and I've only seen clips, small clips of it on Zoom. I mean, on YouTube. But I know that it was a typical kind of BBC's kind of, they cut out Mary, so
Oh,
Mary was lost,
poor Mary.
and it was very much a drawing room drama, as they often were, before our Pride and Prejudice 95, which really blew open the drawing room doors. I always say that, and Andrew Davis brought in nature, really, and the outside, and the men much more.
Yeah.
Um, so it was I think fairly static, very sweet production, but I'm not sure how exciting it was.
Sure. No, I've watched some of the earlier ones, and I don't think I really realized how revolutionary the 1995 one was until I went back. My sweet father, who like doesn't understand Jane Austen at all, one Christmas when I was in high school got me a set of the old BBC ones from like the 70s and 60s, and I watched them and was like, I'm not loving this. Like, this isn't really, because like you said, it's very static. It is sort of like they're all on a stage and sort of monologuing. And so it just wasn't a style that I was familiar with or prepared for. And I was used to your production, and then, the Emma Thompson Sense and Sensibility and things that are very dynamic. And so it was kind of a shock, and it wasn't really something that I was expecting. So that was kind of interesting.
No, and I think Andrew Davis very, very deliberately went into exploring the deeper layers of it, and bringing that to the surface, and taking us out into nature, and into the wildness of nature, to illustrate what was going on underneath, really, rather than a very sort of superficial experience of it, and literal experience of it. He went out and created something much more dynamic, that we all relate to now, and filmic, obviously. And it really was Andrew's adaptation that took us away, I think, and out into the wilds, that then has created all of those dramas ever since, in the same way.
He was a real like pioneer, a real trendsetter.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely in there in the books, as we know.
Mhm,
Is he taking walks, and the outside world is there, very much part of the novels,
mhm,
but was neglected pretty much, in those studio dramas, mostly because it had to be, and it was cost effective, so they were all inside on sets.
mhm.
I think even I think the Laurence Olivier version is fairly indoors most of the time, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah. It's very
Yeah.
much in the drawing room. I think one time they're in a carriage when Lady Catherine shows up. But so your dad, who played Colonel Brandon, thank you, Google, for
Yeah.
telling me all these things, and your sisters are actors too. So what was it like growing up in such an arts and theater oriented family? That sounds really fun.
But of course, I've never known any difference, so it's very difficult to say. But I suppose, yes. I mean, I used to write copiously when I was a child. I wrote lots of very, very, very romantic novels, and my sister
Ooh.
Caroline, I know, and my sister Caroline was unimpressed, and used to apparently groan. Well, I remember her groaning, and saying, "Oh, not another boring novel." And my mum used to say, "It's hardly the Brontes, is it? The Brontes, is it?"
Oh,
So,
harsh.
but yeah, we did charades. We did the whole of course, performance, I suppose, was to a degree present, but in our family, and still is. My son is a director, a theatre director, and he's just directed Pride and Prejudice, sort of. He's assistant directed on that, and
Oh,
I was
okay.
pregnant with him 30 years ago. So, while I was doing Pride and Prejudice, so
I don't think I knew that. Wow.
not to
No.
really how strange. Yes, I was carrying Finn. So so he's also gone into Austen territory and
Hmm.
himself. 30 years on and sort of completing the circle. It's rather amazing.
Yeah, it's this wonderful legacy. And you're also like the great great granddaughter of a famous like a theater set designer as well.
Yes, Joseph Harker. He's there behind me. There he is with his
Oh, oh, cool.
paintbrush. Joseph Harker. He was Henry Irving's scenic painter, and at the time, scenic painters were like filmmakers, really, because there
Yeah.
wasn't any film or TV or any of this.
Hmm.
So yes, and so he was quite revered in that position, and there were lots of they were actors or scenic painters, and his mother was an actress and took him on stage, and they go way back on that side to travelers in the street, not travelers,
Hmm.
jugglers in the street. Mum has always said, so there's a theatrical tradition for as long as we can remember going back. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful legacy. And as I've learned more about Austen, I've learned about her family, and there are parallels with Austen's own upbringing and yours, that she grew up in this very lively literary family. Like her parents and her siblings, they all like to write poems and plays, and they would put on plays in the barn and riddles and jokes and lengthy letters. And some of her brothers like started a newspaper or a periodical while they were at Oxford. And so I think often people think of like great minds or artists as like these sort of like isolated one-offs, but really like they're a product of a larger society or of a family. And so I love how theatrical your family is. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you, thank you. Well, we're all keeping going in it, and musicians. And my niece, actually, this is quite interesting. Just 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I went to see a production of Emma, which was quite wonderful with my mother at Chichester Festival Theatre, and my niece, Ceci, had designed it. So
Oh,
we're
awesome.
still, it keeps going.
Yeah, so behind the scenes, continuing that behind the scenes in front of the scenes.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, exactly. And so she had designed it. It's a most wonderful touring production, which started off in Bath, of all places. Must have been wonderful to see it in Bath. So, and
Hmm.
that's doing a national tour at the moment. But it's really quite a one. If anyone can see it, I know you're over there, so you're unlikely to see it. But
Yes.
you can get clips of it. It would be fantastic. But yeah, but so that's my niece as well. And
Yeah.
we got a couple of musicians, and it doesn't seem that anyone at the moment is bulking the trend and going into accountancy or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son teaches as well. Teachers. There is some teaching going on, so that's good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Pride and Prejudice. Can we just acknowledge for a minute that you were cast as Austen's hottest heroine? I mean, like I have a few supporting quotes from the book if we want to read. They're all but like they're always talking about Jane's looks and how nice she looks. Honestly, it's mostly Mrs. Bennet constantly talking about
Yeah, about her
how
beauty,
about her
her.
beauty. So that had to feel nice, right? How did that feel being cast
Oh
as
gosh. Well, of course they're lovely to be cast, but you don't realize, that's a bit of a burden when you're cast as a great beauty, because obviously
Uh-huh.
most of us don't think of ourselves as, you know, um, but also I think, yes, I mean, I never really considered that. I knew that I had to focus on the grace, I suppose,
Hmm.
and her movement in order to bring her character alive. And I think that's really what the beauty also refers to, especially in those times. I think it was much more about her inner beauty, her grace, and the way she moved and the way she presented, um,
Absolutely.
and and her sort of languidness, I suppose, or grace, and so. I mean, rather than think about, oh gosh, I've been cast as a beautiful girl. I tried to get inside what most people think of as being beautiful, as presenting as beautiful, and I know that she describes in the book. She doesn't describe characters very often, as you know, Jane
Yeah.
Austen. She just certainly doesn't physically describe them. So that was completely up to me, up to
Hmm.
us. But she'll give one or two. She does talk about her languidness. So I latched onto the word languid.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'll keep her laid back and I'll keep her slower. There's a bit in, I can't remember which chapter it is now. I'm sure people out there will know. But she is a lot slower in her demeanor and in the way she moves compared to Lizzie, who's obviously a
Dynamic.
firecracker and present and striding
Hmm.
out. So that gave me a lot of clues, I suppose, because there is no physical description. She rarely physically describes any characters, I think, I think she does once, and I can't remember which character it is, but then again, I know you lot will know as well. But but it's extraordinary, isn't it, how we can instantly visualize these characters without any physical description of them.
Mm-hmm.
They come alive to us in our minds.
Absolutely. And well, the power of adaptation is that you, for many generations, have defined what Jane Bennet looks like. And I think that that's, like you said, maybe a bit of a burden and a curse, but also, I mean, how wonderful that so many people, when they go back and read it, I mean, I know I often do, I just like, oh, there's Susannah Harker. That's what she looks like.
That's
Um,
funny. That's so funny. I mean, I suppose her profile is what I was interested in, to give her a Grecian look
mhm,
and to make the lines of her costume. So John Bright, who was the costume designer, was so fantastic because, we realized that we had to make her bring her elegance, highlight her
mhm,
elegance. So there was a long neckline and there was long, everything was quite long and
mhm.
elegant compared to Lizzie, who had a much shorter style, really.
Yeah, she's got like those short little curls right by her face and things like that. Yeah, I do. I've seen people describe your look in that adaptation as Grecian and as that, we know that standards of beauty sort of change over time and they change based on different societies. And probably what they would have most admired in the Regency era is that sort of classic Grecian look. So that's what everyone was going for, your hair and your costume and all of
Yes,
that.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That was a very conscious decision to do that.
hmm
Yeah.
Well, and so I said I have some quotes. One of the quotes that I really like that isn't from Mrs. Bennet is from Lizzie, and it's when Jane and Lizzie are talking after I think it's the first dance where they meet the Bingleys and or no. Yeah, they meet the Bingleys and Mr. Darcy. And it says, he could not help seeing that you were about 5 times as pretty as every other woman in the room. But unlike Mrs. Bennet, she doesn't dwell on it and think like that's kind of your value or Jane Bennet's value or the only thing that she's good for. Lizzie acknowledges it and then just sort of brushes past it like, yes, obviously you are the best looking person here. Everybody knows that. Let's talk, and then she moves on. So she doesn't really think that that says much about Mr. Bingley that he admires Jane Bennet's beauty because yeah, obvious. It's so obvious to everybody. She's so good looking. Um, and we know that Lizzie is willing to acknowledge it, but it isn't the thing that she values most about her sister, right? Like you mentioned, Jane Bennet has this quiet strength and this grace, and she's really like a genuinely good person. So you've talked about, those outward things that you focused on, languidness and maybe sort of like slow ballet movements. Was there anything that you were focusing on internally about Jane Bennet's character when you were portraying her?
Yes, I mean, I think it's very, very rare. It's very rare to get a totally good character,
Uh-huh.
and she is. And so tuning into that, I think I was very consciously trying to explore the essence of goodness, really, and what goodness is like, and without
hmm
making it a little bit boring, because it might be, you might be, but she isn't. I don't think. I mean, the character herself isn't boring
hmm
because of that quiet strength and inner strength that she has, uh, and her reserve, but also her ability to accept the rejection of love, and her goodness and kindness, which is so innate in her that she doesn't go to sort of bitterness and fury and rage in the
Like
way
Mrs. Bennet. She's such a
that Mrs.
contrast to her
Bennet,
mother.
like
Yeah.
Mrs. Bennet, exactly, or even Lizzie, or even she doesn't possess that. She's one of those people who accepts and forgives and turns away, and it's an extraordinary ability that she
hmm
has. So that was interesting to
Yeah.
explore.
I pulled out a couple of paragraphs from the book because it highlights one of the quotes that I think um, best exemplifies Jane Bennet, and in a way that people don't typically think of her. I think they think of her as pretty and nice and sweet, but this quote I think really highlights her strong backbone and her her sort of strong moral worldview, that she knows what's right and she's going to do it. And I really admire that about her. I don't think writing her off as sort of like a milksop is an appropriate or is an accurate representation of who she is as a character. She's really actually very strong. Um,
And very much based on Cassandra, of course.
mhm,
So that's also where I went and explored and looked to for inspiration, because Cassandra had the most extraordinary stoicism and qualities. After the death of when he was only 24, she was 21, I think, when she lost her
yeah.
fiance. So and they both resolved to survive together, and she kind of looked on. So it's that kind of resilience, I think, that exists in Jane Bennet as well.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah,
Yeah, I think it's really admirable. Okay, are you ready?
I think so. Gosh.
Okay. No. Oh yeah.
Of
No, I'm
course.
the one reading with a professional BAFTA award-winning actress. No big deal. No. Okay, so I'm going to read the narration part and the part of Lizzie. Okay. So this is when Elizabeth is telling Jane the story of Mr. Wickham from Mr. Wickham's perspective. So we don't really know Darcy's perspective yet. Jane listened with astonishment and concern. She knew not how to believe that Mr. Darcy could be so unworthy of Mr. Bingley's regard, and yet it was not in her nature to question the veracity of a young man of such amiable appearance as Wickham. The possibility of his having really endured such unkindness was enough to interest all her tender feelings, and nothing therefore remained to be done but to think well of them both, to defend the conduct of each, and throw into the account of accident or mistake whatever could not be otherwise explained.
They have both been deceived, I dare say, in some way or other, of which we can form no idea. Interested people have perhaps misrepresented each to the other. It is, in short, impossible for us to conjecture the causes or circumstances which may have alienated them, without actual blame, none either side.
Very true indeed. And now, my dear Jane, what have you got to say in behalf of the interested people who have probably been concerned in the business? Do clear them up too, or we shall be obliged to think ill of somebody.
Laugh as much as you choose, but you will not laugh me out of my opinion.
Thank you. That was, oh my gosh. It's so funny how you sounded different. You sounded like Jane Bennet. Oh,
Did
that's so
I?
wonderful. You did. You
It was a
embodied the
long time
character.
ago, Bracken, long
Oh,
time.
it was so wonderful. Yeah, that line right there, laugh as much as you choose, but you will not laugh me out of my opinion. I think if
Yeah.
you pulled that out and polled people, like who do you think said this quote? Most people would be like, "Oh, that's Lizzie. You know, that sounds so much like Lizzie." And it's not. It's Jane. She really is willing to stick to her guns, and I admire
Yeah.
that about her.
Yeah.
Well, that
She
was
is
so
she's a woman of fiber.
Absolutely. Well, so we already touched on this a bit, but so the 1995 Pride and Prejudice obviously has become iconic. And what do you think made that adaptation resonate so strongly then and now? You already talked a bit about like what was the phrase you
I
used?
think it
Busting
is
down the
it's
doors.
blasting open the drawing room doors into
Hmm.
nature and going wild, and bringing in the masculinity as well into that very female story, and bringing those right in and tapping into that, and the undercurrents and the whole of the iconic lake scene,
Hmm.
and which is just really tapping into what's going on underneath, really, and bringing that to the surface. So I think all of that really, and I remember reading it for the first time and thinking it was astonishing. I know Andrew Davis said that some students actually put in that scene into
Oh,
their
really?
final paper because,
Oh.
yes, it was a bit of a problem. But uh, so yeah, I think it is about just smashing wide open those doors and getting into nature and bringing that bucolic and also the kind of rosy bucolic countryside, English countryside, and all the shires just sparkling away on our screens. I think that
Hmm.
really, really helped
I think
people.
to Americans, a lot of Americans, to me at least, the English countryside is like a fairy tale almost. And maybe it's because that's where a lot of our fairy tales come from. But something about it, even though it's real, you know, they're really out in true English countryside, it feels fantastical to me at least in some way. I went to the Lake District this summer for the first time, and I mean it's the land of Wordsworth and of Beatrix Potter, and it's just breathtaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I do love England. I do love it. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, and I think it did deliver in that way, Bracken. I mean, I think it was very rosy. It
Hmm.
was it wasn't a gritty version, unlike the film, which was about getting in the mud and getting dirty, which was great as well, and that worked in a
Hmm.
very different way. But I think this presented a very rosy, bucolic picture, as I say, and I think
Hmm.
people really responded to that, and I think it lifts. I've met people over and over again for so many years now who say that they go back to it to lift their spirits and to put them into. And I think the novel, going back to my grandmother, had that effect as well, and helped people, to lift them really
This
into
is, it's
their
medicinal,
spirit.
100%. I mean, like there are papers written about how Jane Austen's books were given to soldiers during World War I and World War II and
Right.
in convalescence. And there's something about it that heals the soul and nourishes it. And I think the 1995 Pride and Prejudice has done the best job of capturing that, taking it from the page and capturing that on the.
Absolutely capturing that element of it, and I think people do find it very reassuring and uplifting, and she does have a very sanguine, if that's the right word, effect. Makes people feel grounded and good.
Hmm.
I think
Like,
it's about her drive to explore integrity, really,
hmm.
ultimately, and
Yeah.
observe characters, but ultimately Jane Austen drives through to a kind of moral core of things, and
Yeah.
delivers always in that way.
Yeah, and despite all that, the beauty and the bucolic nature side or the scenery and all of that, you can never be completely lulled because she has this biting, sharp wit that wakes you up and that makes you laugh. And so,
Yes.
it's
And
it's
we
not
know all of those, we know all of those people over and over and over again, and we still see them. And that's what's so extraordinary, the reaching across, the decades to us
Mhm.
now, as if there's been no time between. And we know all those people. We all know Mrs. Bennet, have known
Absolutely.
Mrs. Bennet. Not
Yes.
my mum who's upstairs,
I was gonna
but
say they will remain nameless, but we know.
yeah,
We know who
they
they
will.
are.
They will. But also, as we get older ourselves, we also appreciate the older characters and see them in different ways, I think,
Hmm.
and relate to them and have empathy with them. You
Yeah,
know,
I
uh,
think I've said this before, but as you revisit her, Jane Austen, again and again, you do start to sympathize with those characters that you criticized before because age teaches you new things. And
what happens in
I,
life.
yeah.
She is so observant of that and seems to understand every age and every character so uniquely well in her
Hmm.
way, and just have an innate understanding of human nature, that you don't appreciate until you've read it several times, and then you can see as you get older, you go, how did she know that?
Yeah. She's
She's
kind of the best at human nature.
brilliant.
It's kind of just her and Shakespeare. It's that insight into the
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite behind the scenes memory from filming that still makes you smile? I will tell you, so 2 years ago we had Adrian Lucas on. So
Oh
fun
yeah.
talking about Wickham with him. And he was talking about like being naked in the hot tub with Colin Firth, and we're like, oh my gosh, he was getting really sensationalistic. It doesn't have to be like that. Everyone
I
can keep
really
their
can't tell you
clothes
about
on.
being. I really can't tell you about being naked in a hot tub. Mostly because I was actually pregnant, so it would have been deeply
Right.
inappropriate for me to be naked in a hot
Well,
tub. And in
absolutely.
fact, I used to disappear because I was pregnant. I wasn't pregnant for the first 2 months, but then I became pregnant for the last 4 months.
Hmm.
So of the shoot, it was a 6 month shoot. And so I would often, when the crew were all getting together and the cast were all getting together and having drinks and at the end of the day, I would be retiring to bed very early
Yeah.
in a
Or
in a
barfing in a hedgerow.
Victorian white no nightie, and then we were filming at somewhere called the Bell Inn, and I think it was near Oxfordshire. I'm not sure which shire it was, but one of them. And it was a very famous old haunted
Ooh.
inn. Yeah. And so I went to bed at about 9 o'clock while everyone else was at the bar. And they were having a particularly raucous evening, I think, that evening. And I've been told that I kept being told that the hotel is haunted, the hotel is haunted, the corridor outside your room is haunted. And I thought, I just mustn't think about it. I'll go to bed about it. So it took me some time to get up to sleep, which was a little bit like Northanger Abbey. this
Mm-hmm.
experience. And so I did eventually get off to sleep and listening to all the noises going on downstairs. And then there was a rattling on my door
Oh no.
suddenly at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So I sat bolt upright thinking, this is the ghost.
It's Jacob Marley.
So I said, oh, hello. I said, what is your name? And then the ghost, who I thought said, Kevin. So I thought that's a very strange name for a ghost.
That's a terrible name for a
A
ghost.
terrible name, unlikely name for a ghost. So I said, what do you want of me? And the handle sort of shook a bit more, and then there were footsteps, and it went back into the corridor, went away. The next morning, and I will not say who it was, there were two actors, or one of the actors, one of the sisters, and a visiting boyfriend, and the door was wide open, and I realized that the visiting boyfriend had been the ghost. So
Found
that's
the wrong room.
my memories. I'm afraid it's not. That's a memory. But other than that, so I was really quite outside of it, because I used to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get my hair, because I was the only one who had my hair done, weaved into that Grecian effect. So I have lots of memories of the ballroom scenes, which were extraordinary. When we came back to shoot and they had to disguise my pregnancy then. When we came back,
Empire waists are good for that, right?
But the bosom is also quite responsive, I discovered. So there were lots of kind of hushed, quick, get her back into the fitting room. So, yeah, I do remember those long days and not being able to sit down because my hair was in this extraordinary thing, not being able to lie down on it. Yeah, I mean, I have many fond memories. The girls all together, the dining room scenes, all sitting around there. We laughed a lot. When Julia Sawala came on, she'd been on another job. Julia came on later, and she was playing Lydia, and she was brought in all the Lydia energy to that house, to the Bennet household.
She's great.
She's so fantastic.
Speaking of bosoms, I mean, in the whole adaptation, everyone's bosoms are up to their chins. I mean, there's so much bosom.
It's the bosom, which wasn't actually quite right. I mean, really, if you look at it's not the ideal Regency silhouette, really, because mostly those dresses were kind of, not worn with such a bosom, but we were a little bit more Victorian in that respect.
Okay, so sorry, do you have any more memories you wanted?
I can't remember. Yes, but no, we used to sit around and laugh, and doing those dining room scenes was a very bonding moment for us all. And Julia used to do lots of voices from Brief Encounter, from the cafe and Brief Encounter, the film. There was a sort of there was the lady who works in the cafe, and we always used to say, "Yeah, hands off me Banbury's," which is a line. I can't believe I'm telling you this. I'm feeling slightly embarrassed.
It's funny. I like it.
So, and that used to crack us all up. And so we used to often be in fits of laughter before a take and having to get it together. So it was a fantastic feeling. It really was a bit like going back to the convent, really.
Yeah.
That's
so great. That's a lot of fun. So if you could play any other Austen heroine, do you have one in mind who you'd like to portray? If you could.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm obviously not cast now.
No, in an ideal world.
In an ideal world, well, I think Anne Elliot is my favorite.
Oh, I love her.
Favorite. I love her.
There's that quiet strength again.
Quiet strength, and what I love that book. That's my favorite book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a wonderful one. And I always think that Persuasion doesn't get enough adaptations, I think.
We're on the brink of the next Pride and Prejudice, of course, coming out
soon,
aren't we?
It feels too soon. That's crazy. They've been doing audiobooks. Like there was like a full cast audiobook that Audible just did. I wonder if that counts for our once a decade.
I didn't know that.
Well, so lately you have been revisiting Jane Bennet in your creative work. Can you tell us a bit about Jane Bennet's Second Spring?
I guess it's a midlife coming of age story, really, which draws on my own personal life and experience, and it's about navigating midlife and visibility, female visibility, which all sounds very serious, but it's not very serious. It's a comedy. It's a comedy drama. So there is a serious tone to it.
I mean, that's Jane Austen, right? Like, it sounds very serious, but also
Yeah,
hilarious.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane Austen does come into it, and my own relationship with the Austen fan world, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and how that helped me navigate a particular time of my life,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and how Austen herself helped me navigate a particular time of my life, and the kind of advice and message that I got from Austen. And so that's what I'm writing about. And so we're doing well. There's a lot of interest. It looks like it'll, hopefully, all being well, it'll go into production in 2026.
Okay. Is it a play, a short film?
No, it's a film. It's a
A
film.
film. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it a one woman show? Are there other
No,
characters?
no. There are lots of characters, lots of
Okay.
different characters, and hopefully, I think there'll be some characters from the original, from Pride and Prejudice '95 in it as well. Some of the actors.
Oh, that's very exciting. Yeah. So what has it been like revisiting it 30 years later? I mean, it's a big year for Jane Austen, but it's a big year for the BBC production as well. It's the 30-year anniversary. Have you been reflecting on that a lot this year?
Yeah, a lot, because I've been doing a lot of these
Right.
meetings and interviews, and it was an extraordinary thing to go to Baltimore and be out there with the jazz and a lot. That was quite wonderful,
Good.
because I've been writing about it as well, as I can't talk too much about it because it's still in process, but so to actually go and physically see all of those wonderful people dressing up and the enthusiasm behind it was a real kind of tonic, I suppose,
That's good.
and very uplifting, and really gave me a tremendous spur into the next stage of this script. So
Hmm. Well,
yeah.
that's great because you were describing at the beginning about how many people have told you that how much that movie has meant to them and how it has uplifted them. So it's wonderful that they were able to pay that back a little
I
bit. The
know.
fans were able to buoy you up. That is so wonderful. This has been so fun. This is a dream come true. Thank you so
Oh,
much, Susannah Harker.
sure.
Where can listeners find you online if they want to know more about what you're up to?
So yeah, at the moment, you just go to JBSS, which stands for Jane Bennet Second Spring, on Instagram. And if you go below, there's a Patreon site, which is coming up soon, which is going to be obviously have lots of content and information about where we're going next.
Hmm. That's
That's what
great.
we're doing at the moment. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will keep our eye out for that. Thank you so
Oh,
much, Susannah.
take good care. Bye
All
bye.
right. Dear listeners, I just wanted to end today's episode by saying thank you. Austen Chat now has over 100 five-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We are thrilled and so grateful for everyone who has left a review. If you haven't left a review yet, please consider giving the show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. The more reviews we get, the easier it is for new Janeites to find us. Join us again next month for another episode. In the meantime, I remain yours affectionately, Breckenwood.